What's going on, everyone? Claire McKee here with Modern Media Network, and we are back with another edition of Golden West Property Management, always bringing amazing information to all of our listeners out there on what's going on in the community of San Diego. So I'm back with Roy True and David Stein. He's the broker and owner of Principal Equity Group, and we're going to chat a little bit about ADUs because there's a lot of amazing information out there and resources, and I want to make sure we chat about that. So I'm going to let you guys kind of take it from here. Where do you want to start?
Hey, David, so in regards to ADUs, I know it's a good option for a lot of our investors that may have a single family home. And we were talking a little bit about what they have available for people that are looking to make that investment. Can you kind of expand on that?
Yeah, right now the county of San Diego and the city, they've really gone out of their way to try to make this available. There's obviously a housing shortage, and they want to create that by letting people and loosening restrictions for people to build in the backyard and create multi-units even, and if there's enough room, obviously depending on the square footage. There's a bunch of different guidelines. They have overhead wires, subterranean, piping, stuff like that. So just with most of the features and most of the options, they've gone out of their way to create that opportunity for San Diego homeowners. Now, whether it's an owner-occupied or a non-owner property, you still are able to do, you're still able to do this opportunity. And the city has actually created and bought their own plans. They have 3 individual plans that you can choose from. And these 3 plans are universal, just depending on the square footage. So it saves you about $15,000 in architect fees, $12,000 to $15,000 right off the bat. So anyone that has, extra room, not only when you build the ADU, you create residual income, rental income, equity, and you just create just better net income, net everything. So what I'm thinking the best thing to do is whenever there's an opportunity, it's free to look to see if you're actually available to put it in your backyard. Some are tight, some are not. And when you are west of the 5 or close to the beach, the amount of equity that's built in the property and rental income is incredible. So a lot of people can actually start living on a free roll income with the guy in the backyard paying all their bills. So that's why I'm really a huge fan of the ADU.
That's awesome. So, I mean, not only are you getting additional revenue and rent income, you're spreading your risk, you're spreading your costs, especially on a rental property. Could you speak to one of the worries I hear on the landlord side is, how do I split off the utilities? Is that something that they want to get done metered separately? What's your best suggestion there?
So that's a great question. And I always say you have to get separate meters. Now, obviously, when you're building, it's going to have an additional expense. But even when you're building 2, 3, 4 units, say you buy a single family and you're going to turn it into a fourplex, which the guidelines are also really laxed on as well. You want to build 4 meters in there. You never want to you want to spend a little bit more now so you have less headache moving on. And, as a landlord, it's very impossible to split up 1 meter. So you want to have 4 for a 4 unit, 3 for a 3, 2 for a 2. And when you have a single family with an ADU on it, always spend the extra money to get them, separate meters, and it'll save you a lot of headache, moving forward.
Yeah. Take the money you would spend on the architect for the plan and put that into the meter, right?
That is a great point, and would be the recommendation here.
And I know these plans like the back of your hand down at the city planning office. Are they all mainly for just one single unit, or is there a 1-bedroom plan, 2-bedroom plan? Could you tell us a little bit more about what those look like?
Yeah, they have just different square footages, and it's whatever, obviously is available for your individual property. Some properties, you could have the biggest backyard ever and have an overhead wire, and then you're not eligible to build anything. It just, a lot of the older houses in the older neighborhoods that don't have the subterranean wires, that's a big problem. So, obviously it just depends on your individual property, the square footage and whatnot. And yes, there's different types of, things you can build, but there's also maximums. You can't build greater than the owner occupied house or the main house. because then you create like a monster in the backyard that's twice as big as the owner occupied property, and they won't allow you to do that. But what I have seen a lot of people doing in Claremont and, you know, in the Golden Triangle and those kind of areas, they actually they are downsizing by building the ADU in the backyard, then they move into it, and then they rent out their primary house, which is usually more income anyhow because the square footage is way larger and they can bring a family in, and then now they're living in a brand new property and someone else is paying all their bills.
That's a great point. Fantastic point. So in regards to the lending process, getting some money on this, what's your best suggested course of action? That's somebody that may be entertaining this idea.
So that's another great question. I always recommend, you know, taking money off the primary house. If you have equity there, you shift that equity into obviously the building and the ADU by a cash out refi, a home equity line of credit, a second mortgage, just a straight second cash out. There's many different ways. Obviously, if you have equity in any property, you want to look at shifting that to another. And obviously you want to go for your primary first because you're going to get your best interest rates. Then your second homes, then your investment properties. In that order is how you're going to get a better interest rate. So obviously you want to talk to a mortgage professional. I'm not saying they have to talk to me, but talk to a mortgage professional and they'll show you, hey, this is the path of least resistance. This is the best way to do it because, you know, you're going to save money from this property and whatnot. And I always recommend, you know, taking that equity that you built up over these years and using that, putting that to work and getting another income source coming in. And obviously you could go cash. A lot of people don't have the cash to do that. So I would always recommend financing, even if you do have the cash, use that cash to buy another rental property.
Cool. And one last quick question for our current clients and landlords. What's the best, where do they start? Should they reach out to a professional like yourself and have somebody go look at the property? Is that a service you provide? Tell me, how do we get into this? How do we point them in the right direction?
So that's another great question. You keep having these great questions. That's the number one thing you have to do. You have to get a professional who does this for a living to come over and inspect the property first. They'll do the Google search, then they'll do the overhead, then they're going to pull the city plan, you know, the plans, the permits, the original ones. So they'll know the boundary lines and whatnot. And usually a lot can be done before they even get out to the property. But I work with 2 or 3 different companies in town, and they specialize in just this and this only. And they'll go out to the property, do the measurements, and they'll say, hey, you know what, you can't do anything. There's an overhead wire right here. Or, hey, you have to be set back from, you know, the property by, you know, a certain amount of feet, and we can't do it. But, you know, a lot of the times they'll come back and say, hey, this is what you could do. You have about 3 options. You can build it like this, that, or the other. And they will show you the way to get those permits done. I have a guy that he's probably doing about 30 of these a month. And so when you hire him, he takes care of the plans, the permits, and gets that stuff from the city. And he basically does all the legwork. He can find the contractor for you, you know, guys that he works with on a multitude of times. It's better to use a guy over and over again than a one-time guy that could take your money and run. So you have to work with contractors is another huge, you know, thing. You cannot go cheap on contractors. You have to make sure it's almost like a doctor. You know, you don't just get a doctor off Yelp. You got to have a referral. You got to be comfortable with that person, and it's your financial health. So I always recommend, you know, you got to have those few things. But and we have people we work with that have, you know, 100 5-star reviews on Google out of 100 5-star reviews. So we can set people up with them as well.
Good. Thank you so much, David, for taking the time to talk about this really hot button topic here in San Diego.
Really just the importance of working with professionals too,
Right.
From the beginning process of securing that ADU and getting the funding and figuring that out to who's going to manage it and help
Right.
me make money on it and make sure that this makes sense for all of us, which is where you guys can come in with the property.
Yeah, I'd like to add on that. You know, we have a lot of clients that try to do it themselves versus clients that we send to Roy. And the difference is 100% difference in results. Just renting yourself, anyone can rent something out. Anyone can do that. But if you don't do it professionally, with Roy and his company or, you know, or whatnot, you're in for a lot of headaches that you didn't see coming.
They usually cost when it's too late, unfortunately. But
Yep.
yeah, thank you again. Thank you so much, David. And we'll send some information out so people can get a link to your info. And we'll talk again soon.
Thanks so much, David.
Thanks, guys. Be safe.
Yep, you too.